Colleagues, friends, what a pleasure it is to welcome you to this digital dialogue on safe and enabling learning environments, which is hosted by UNESCO, Safe to Learn and UNICEF. My name is Helen Morton. I work for the Prevention of Violence Unit at the World Health Organization, and I've had the immense pleasure of spending the past 18 months dedicating much of my time to working on the delivery and the accountability of the first ever Global Ministerial Conference on Ending Violence Against Children. Many of you will be aware of that ministerial conference. In fact, many of you contributed both to the ambition and the announcements that were made at Bogota last November. And I'm sure you join us in recognizing that community is absolutely critical to delivery and accountability of the pledges made in Bogota. In fact, the reason for this digital dialogue taking place, and in fact 8 digital dialogues that have taken place across the previous 5 weeks and the coming 3 weeks, is really to ensure that we maintain momentum, we drive delivery, we anchor accountability, and we continue to build community, because we see community as absolutely critical to ensuring that the pledges made in Bogota are delivered. We have an exceptional session for you today. I'm delighted to say that you'll be hearing from Jamaica to Nigeria, Sri Lanka to Turkey. You'll hear from experts, you'll hear from allies, and you'll hear from child advocates, all of whom make a very compelling case for the importance of safe and enabling learning environments, their value as a breakthrough in ending violence against children, and can reflect very concretely on how those 49 pledges that were made in Bogota on safe and enabling learning environments are being navigated from announcement into action. 2 very quick points to note for you. This session is being recorded. You'll find a copy of that recording on the official Global Ministerial Conference website. We'll put the link to that in the chat function, and we'd encourage you to make use of that website. In fact, not just the safe and enabling learning environments pledges are there. Every pledge, the 113 member states that made pledges, all of the information is there, and it's the one-stop shop for monitoring the delivery of those pledges. So I encourage you to check out the previous digital dialogues there. And also to let you know that there will be a translation. Our Turkish representative on the call today, there will be a translation function available, and the directions for that, I believe, are being put into the chat function now. So without further ado, allow me to hand over to your moderator for the session, Gemma Wilson-Clark from the Safe to Learn Coalition. Gemma, thanks so much. Across to you.
Thanks very much, Helen. I'm looking forward to moderating this session. Welcome, everyone. As Helen said, I'm head of the Safe to Learn Secretariat, the global coalition working to end violence in, around and through schools, leveraging the power and the influence of all the fantastic members of the Safe to Learn coalition. So I think we have a couple more housekeeping points before we start the session. Firstly, please do use the Q&A function to post your questions and comments. We'll try and answer some of those questions in real time, and we'll save some of those questions for the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. And we also invite you to check the chat function because we'll be posting useful resources that will be helpful for you. So let me first turn to Pia Brito, the Global Director, Education and Adolescent Development at UNICEF, to give the welcoming remarks.
Thanks, Gemma, so much, and a really warm welcome to everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, from where you're joining from around the world. On behalf of UNICEF, a very proud partner of the Safe to Learn Coalition, I'm delighted to welcome you to this digital dialogue. As Helen mentioned, it's been almost a year we were in Bogota, and it was such a privilege to be there for the ministerial conference. I have to say that gathering really left a deep impression on me, especially in that room when 44 countries stood up and pledged to take meaningful action to end violence in and around schools. Was a phenomenal energy, and the commitments were so strong. And I'm really excited we meet here again today to ask that question. So how are we turning those pledges into action? I think today's dialogue, the one that we focus on, because safe and enabling schools are not just a nice to have, they are a must have. And this is why it's so important, because they form the foundation of children's inclusion, well-being, and learning. And we come together because as much as it is a must-have, the reality is sobering. It's 1 in 3 students experiencing bullying or peer violence. 1 in 16 adolescents facing cyberbullying, often connected to school life. And 1 in 5 children lives in conflict-affected areas, with more than 52 million out of school. Just all too often, their schools have been attacked or destroyed. And this is sobering because it's not just statistics. It's sobering because it is really that wake-up call. All of this, behind it is one simple truth. Every school must be a safe place to learn for every child everywhere. But we're not just going to stay with the fascination of the problem. Today, we're moving into action, and that's the good news. Through the Safe to Learn Coalition, this global alliance of 16 partners, governments, civil society, and children themselves are driving that change. And on behalf of UNICEF, I want to say we're really honored to host the Safe to Learn Secretariat and support countries to embed violence prevention in their response to education systems. 18 countries have already endorsed the Safe to Learn call to action, which sets out 5 clear priorities. Implement laws and policies that protect learners, strengthen school-level prevention and response mechanisms, shift harmful gender and social norms to promote positive behavior change, invest in resources needed to make schools safe, and use evidence to inform action and accountability. And today's work is in perfect harmony with UNICEF's upcoming strategic plan for 2026-2029. That is our final focused push to achieve the child-related Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. That plan positions safe, supportive schools as central to children's learning, inclusion, and well-being. It calls on us to strengthen systems, engage communities, use data and evidence wisely, and adopt gender transformative approaches that shift norms and protect children. These are not abstract ambitions. These actions we are already turning into reality. And since 2023, we have been honored to host the Safe to Learn Secretariat that is reinforcing how learning and safety go hand in hand. And I have to say that that formula is one that really is a winning formula to get children feeling safe, learning with security and inclusion. With this platform, we work with countries to end violence around the world through schools, using schools as springboards for safety, learning, and broader social change. I'm really excited today. We're going to hear from Jamaica, Nigeria, South Africa, Sri Lanka, and Turkey, countries that are moving from promise to progress. It is going to be such an exciting learning agenda that begins with Ana Sofia, a child delegate from Bogota, who is a powerful reminder to who we are accountable to. Government representatives will share with us what's working, the challenges, and what's needed. And finally, our partners UNESCO and Together for Girls will showcase practical tools that can help to scale up efforts. Today can be much more than a digital dialogue. I believe it will be a catalyst. We left Bogota with the momentum, we'll all recall that, and today's conversation carries that forward. It turns commitments into sustained change until every child can walk through the school gate with one certainty. Here, I am safe. Here, I can learn. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pia, for those inspiring words and reminding us all why we've come together today. Before we turn to our youth activists, let me just make one housekeeping point. Today we do have a speaker from Turkey, and in order that we can all follow her remarks, could I just ask that we move to the interpretation channel? You'll need to do this, otherwise you won't hear the English translation. So I'm just going to tell everybody how to do that, and then we can move on. So if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the More button with 3 dots. It's at the very bottom of your screen on the right. You need to click on that More button with the 3 dots. Then you need to click on Interpretation. And then if you wish to hear the session in English, you need to press English. And I'll remind you again before we hear from Turkey. Thank you. So now let us turn to our youth activists. First, we'll hear from Anna Sophia, a child delegate and a member of the Leading Change Participation Network, supported by Save the Children, and a child delegate that was active at the Bogota conference last year. Thank you.
Hola, mi nombre es Ana Sofía, tengo 16 años, soy de Colombia y el día de hoy les vamos a contar en nombre de la niñez qué son las cosas que ustedes como líderes deberían hacer para que nuestras escuelas fueran lugares más seguros. Primero, hacer conocer más la declaración de escuelas seguras. No queremos que la declaración sea solo algo escrito en un papel, sino que queramos verla reflejada en acciones concretas para nuestros territorios, verla reflejados en paz, en lugares y entornos protectores para nosotros. Queremos que conozcan nuestras realidades para que así se puedan tomar decisiones. No queremos que se sigan tomando decisiones por y para nosotros, sin nosotros. Para que se dejen de tomar estas decisiones por y para nosotros y sin nosotros, necesitamos que como líderes promuevan espacios en los que la niñez pueda participar, en los que la niñez pueda dar a conocer sus ideas. Pero no queremos que sean solo espacios y se queden ahí, sino que queremos que esas cosas que nosotros propongamos sean convertidas y sean tenidas en cuenta en realidad. Queremos seguir viéndolas en acciones concretas, que los espacios en los que participemos no se queden solo ahí, sino que podamos seguir haciéndole seguimiento a cada uno de nuestros espacios, a la niñez, niños, jóvenes, adolescentes. Recuerden no tener miedo, nosotros somos el presente, nosotros somos quienes tenemos el poder de liderar el cambio y demostrar y generar un verdadero impacto en nuestro territorio.
Thank you. And Anna Sophia would have loved to have been with us today, but she's very busy at school. But we have some other youth activists to hear from who have messages on what action leaders can take in order to make sure that schools are safe places to learn.
Leaders should visit a school and discuss the issue about violence against children with the teacher and student and act accordingly.
I call on world leaders to do whatever it is they can do to provide funding, laws and policies that will protect children and ensure education for every child.
विद्यालयमा बालबालिकामाथि हुने हिंसा विरुद्धको काम गर्नको लागि पहिलो सुरुमा त हरेक स्कुलमा साइकोलोजिस्ट राख्नुपर्छ र साथै कर्पोरल पनिशमेन्ट नदिने नियम लागू गर्नुपर्छ.
Thank you. So now we'll turn to hearing from speakers representing governments from 4 countries across different regions of the world and different line ministries, all with responsibility for ensuring safe schools from Jamaica, Nigeria, Sri Lanka, and Turkey. They'll be reflecting on their country's progress towards the pledges made in Bogota and the lessons they're learning about how to inspire others to accelerate efforts to promote safe and enabling learning environments. So let me first turn to Ms. Hyacinth Blair, Senior Director of Children's Affairs and Policy in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information for the Government of Jamaica. Thank you, Ms. Blair.
Good morning from my end, everyone. The government of Jamaica, through the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth, and Information, has invested in the development of policies and protocols to guide the nation's schools, just to ensure that there is safe and enabling learning environment. Now, this includes, we're currently in the process of developing a safe school policy, which is far advanced in terms of the status of development. We're also have in place a protocol for management and response to farm incidents in schools. There's an anti-child trafficking manual. There's a policy to treat with substance misuse, critical incidents management plan. We have also guidelines that cover contact sports and how we can keep children safe. We have guidelines for the removal of hazardous materials and waste. And all of these exist to provide guidance to the system to ensure a safe and enabling learning environment for teaching and learning. Also, the ministry, the government has invested in CCTV surveillance system, which is to provide particularly targeting schools in volatile communities that have recorded high incidences of violence. And this is done through partnership. We have an interministerial school support strategy, which provides targeted and consolidated support to schools located in these communities, declared as zones of special operations. And where significant focus is placed on governance, leadership, management, improving literacy and numeracy, and providing psychosocial support. Approximately 25,000 students, medium and high-risk students from 37 schools in these communities have been impacted by this program. And this is supported through partnership and under the Government of Jamaica Citizen Security Plan. We have, of course, as our screen is showing, a National Parenting Support Commission that provide guides, support parents, guiding families in implementing positive nonviolent approach to discipline. And we also have what is widespread across the system, the school-wide positive behavior interventions and support system framework. And this framework provides a comprehensive use where schools can use the framework. It is designed to be used to provide a response to whatever the context of misbehavior is within the school. So the SWP-BIS, as we call it, provides a comprehensive framework that can be used by any school to design their own system of behavior support for all students. And it is assigned according to a tier system, where at the tier 1, all students in the schools are impacted. It provides where there are core values that are adopted by the schools and adopted by all students. And it provides positive reinforcement for students, consistent consequences for problem behavior. Then there is a tier 2 where targeted support or intervention is provided by the schools for students that may need additional support above what is given to the general populace. And then we have a tier 3 system where specialist intervention for students in need of support that is external to the schools. And therefore, we might need to refer these students to another agency or provide support outside of schools where the government provides the support for that. And so this is a system that we we have gone in terms of the implementation of the school-wide positive behavior framework. We have gone over 50% of schools already, because we've gone 522 schools that have been trained to date in the implementation of this strategy. And we have a little over 1,000 schools to roll out this program. So we have gone over 50% of it. In terms of the pledge, we can go to the next slide. In terms of the pledge, what we intend to do is to evaluate the impact of some of the programs within the SWPB's framework. And so we are currently in the process of developing the terms of reference to guide that evaluation, bearing in mind that the framework provides a space where schools can develop their own programs to treat with the issue of violence that would be specific to their schools, and we provide the support from a government perspective. And so we want to look at the various programs that are within that framework and to evaluate the effectiveness of them across the system with a view to scaling up the ones that are most effective. And so we're at the process where we're developing the terms of reference to engage a technical support so that we can start the process of evaluation. What are the challenges and opportunities? We know that we have a lot of programs and initiatives in schools, but we have not done much in terms of the evaluation of these, which is what we want to address. And we also need more connection in terms of case management systems and processes, because each entity treating with children do have their own case management system, which need to speak more to each other. Of course, we have the limitations in terms of financial resources that we are trying to find ways around through partnership, and that would extend to human resource. But we also continue to work in terms of the integration across sectors. Thank you. This is where we are now.
Thank you so much, Ms. Blair. That was really informative and a whistle-stop tour through the work that your ministry is doing to support safe learning. And I particularly appreciated the focus on evaluation and learning, looking at how these interventions can be scaled based on your experience to date. So thank you very much. Let's now move to Mr. Musa Aliyu Musa, who is the Deputy Director in the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs in Nigeria. Over to you.
Good afternoon. That's my time here in Nigeria. During the Bogota conference, Nigeria made 3 pledges around safe and enabling schools environment. Number 1, Nigeria pledged to invest 112.18 billion naira in the national plan to finance safe schools over 3 years. In line with that, Nigeria had made significant progress in the following area. Nigeria has successfully developed a national plan for financing education, which has even exceeded the pledge. The amount that the country pledged is 144.7 billion naira, aimed to protect at-risk schools, learners, teachers, and non-teaching staffs. Considering the situation in Nigeria, where we experience some insurgency attacks in schools in some part of the country. Secondly, Nigeria has pledged to commit to integrating positive discipline and anti-bullying curricula into all teachers' pre-service and in-service training by 2030. So in that wise, Nigeria has developed a national anti-bullying policy, which will give backing to the integration of positive discipline and anti-bullying curricula into all teacher pre-service and in-service training by 2030. However, currently, through different initiatives such as UNESCO O3 project, teachers in pre and in-school service are being trained on prevention of bullying in schools. And thirdly, Nigerian government has pledged to enhance access to effective gender equitable education and socio-emotional learning for all children by 2030. In that wise, to ensure that all children of school age have access to education opportunities, Nigeria has accelerated its basic education program to ensure that we succeed in making sure that all children in Nigeria have access to education. The Nigerian government has also established gender desks in the 36 state ministries of education and the FCT, that's the Federal Capital Territory, to ensure that especially girls are given the opportunity to go to school, considering the huge amount of out-of-school girls in Nigeria. And Nigeria has also developed a policy on safety, security, and violence-free schools. The implementation of this will ensure that learning environment in Nigeria is free and secured for children to go to school and access education. Equally, Nigeria has put in place a National Safe Schools Response and Coordination Center. What this center does is to make sure that it responds to immediately on issues of attacks wherever it happens in the country. And then also Nigeria has in existence a multi-sectoral technical working group where issues of safe schools are being discussed. Especially, we have what is called the Technical Working Group on Ending Violence Against Children. We have a technical working group on ending child marriage. And then we equally have a technical working group on alternative care for children to ensure that all children are involved in them developing the country. And now coming to the challenges, we have some challenges in Nigeria. As you are aware, or maybe aware, the support that we usually receive from USAID has been withdrawn. In that wise, some of the organizations that are providing educational programs and support to our children in Nigeria has ceased to operate due to the shortage or cut in funding. Equally, Nigeria's education is on a concurrent list whereby states have the autonomy to decide on what they want to do as regards to education. But in that wise, the federal government is trying to ensure that the states key in to what the federal government is doing to ensure that all children have the opportunity to access education. So in that wise, having that autonomy to decide on what to do, it gives, it brings a situation whereby there is a kind of uneven coverage of safe school initiatives at the sub-national level, but work is in progress for from the part of the federal government to ensure that states key into what the federal government is trying to do to ensure safe schools and learning environment. Then coming to the opportunities that we have here in Nigeria, Nigeria has availability of donor support, and they are interested in supporting education in Nigeria. For example, the UNICEF, UNESCO, and other local NGOs working around the improvement of education. So we see that as an opportunity to ensure that we have a safe and enabling learning environment for children in Nigeria. Equally, Nigeria has accelerated its basic education program to address the reintegration of dropouts and teenage mothers in Nigeria. Before now in Nigeria, when a girl is a kind of pregnant in school, she tends to be dismissed from the school, or she will be sent away from the schools. But now the government has put in place a kind of directives now that all students, no matter the circumstance, must remain in school. And then there's a renewed interest in reducing out-of-school children from the government with the establishment of so many technical working groups to ensure that out-of-school children are brought back to school. So with this, Nigeria, is work in progress towards making sure that children in Nigeria are having a safe and enabling learning environment. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Musa. It was really positive to hear the significant progress that the government is making in developing a national investment plan and the policies to address violence in schools towards realizing those Bogota pledges, and also the positive collaboration of wider partners in support of safe learning. So thank you. Before we move to the next speaker, can I remind everybody listening today that we'd really like to hear your questions, and we'll put those to the panelists. So please do use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen if there's any questions that you'd like to ask. So now let me turn to Ms. Chandima Rathnayake, the Deputy Director of Education in the Ministry of Education of Sri Lanka. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chandima from Sri Lanka. It is an honor to address this international conference. Last year at the Ministerial Conference, Sri Lanka made pledges to safeguard of children. Today, here I am presenting the commitments made by Sri Lanka Ministry of Education. The first one is revise the 2016 circular banning corporal punishment in schools to update guidance to better address strategies for eliminating corporal punishment and different type of violence in schools in alignments with the government of Sri Lanka's ongoing legislative process to ban corporal punishment of Sri Lankan children in all settings by mid-2025. Pilot and scale nationwide capacity development for teachers on positive discipline techniques and 21st skills to prevent and respond to violence in schools, building on lessons learned from existing initiatives. Talk about the progress. To support the implementations of the projects, developed a 3-year plan to address violence against children in and around the schools, outlining short-term and long-term interventions. An interministerial steering committee has been appointed by the Secretary, Minister of Education. With support from UNICEF, we have carefully designed a positive discipline program to foster a violence-free culture in schools. This includes the development of a comprehensive capacity development package for teachers on positive discipline techniques, which largely focus on sensitization the teachers on the consequences of physical and emotional punishment, its legal implications. The package was tested among a group of teachers in the Central Province and had received very positive feedback. The package will be piloted and rolled out of all the schools. The training will help schools in adopting constructive disciplinary methods. Additionally, we have submitted a proposal to revise the circular on discipline in schools with a robust system for monitoring and reporting. Discussions have been held with Ministry of Women and Child Affairs, and National Child Protection Authority and UNICEF, and other key stakeholders on their support to implement the pledges. If you talk about the challenges and opportunities, This deep-rooted social norm requires a multi-sectoral and multi-pronged approach. The Interministerial Steering Committee provides the opportunity to, therefore, in the effort to sensitize teachers, the Ministry of Education intends to engage with psychiatrists, lawyers, police, child protection authorities, and other stakeholders. Strong belief and attitudes of the society. Therefore, it's important that we work with community and religious leaders to amplify positive messages. Ongoing legal reforms, including the amendment of laws related to violence against children. The training package includes clear information on Sri Lanka's penal code regarding the legal implications of physical and psychological abuse. The government's current education reforms provides the opportunity to integrate it into the education policies, plans and teachers' educations. Additionally, traditionally, parents like teachers who beat the children. To change the attitude of both teachers and the society, we have planned to carry out the campaign through all media, including social media. These are the measures taken by the Ministry of Education to prevent violence against children in schools. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Chandima. And thank you for sharing with us the efforts of Sri Lanka to create a violence-free culture in schools and reflecting on the really big mind shift change that's needed, not only within schools, but across the wider community in order to really reinforce the need for positive discipline in schools. So thank you. We're now going to turn to Turkey, and we'll be hearing from Ms. Ayşegül, the Director General of Childcare Services in the Ministry of Family and Social Services. And once again, if you would like to hear her remarks in English, you will need to go to the More button at the bottom of the screen. Click on that, click on Interpretation, and click on English. Otherwise, you will be hearing the original Turkish. So let me hand over to Ms. Ayşegül. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Ayşegül Yıldırım Kara. I am the Director General of Child Services from Turkey. After briefly introducing myself in my presentation, I will discuss our country's pledge to safe and enable learning environments, which we highlighted at the Ministerial Conference on Ending Violence Against Children, as well as the progress made in this area. Additionally, I will address the opportunities we have as a country in this field, as well as the challenges we face. I am pleased to participate in this webinar. I will continue my presentation in Turkish. Bugün ülkemizin daha evvel verdiği taahhütlerden güvenli ve güçlendirici okul ortamları taahhüdüyle ilgili olarak ülkemizde yapılan çalışmaları sizlerle paylaşmak istiyorum. Türkiye dil, din, ırk ayrımı gözetmeksizin tüm çocukların yaşam standartlarını yükseltmek, haklarını geliştirmek, hayatın her alanına tam ve eşit biçimde katılımlarını sağlamak ve toplumdaki statülerini güçlendirmek amacıyla kapsamlı çalışmalar yürütüyor. Konferansın düzenlendiği tarihten bu yana mevcut uygulamalarımıza ek olarak şu adımları attık. Öncelikle sınıf temelli müdahale programını hazırladık. Bu program, travma sonrası tepkileri sınıf ortamında azaltmak, drama, oyun, yazı, ritim, müzik, resim ve anlatım gibi yöntemlerle öğrencilerin psikolojik sağlamlığını artırmak, travmatik olaylar sonrası iyi oluşlarını desteklemek amacıyla hazırlandı. Yine öğretmenlerin iyi oluşu ve akran zorbalığına karşı kapasitelerini geliştirme projesi geliştirdik. Burada da öğretmenlerin stresle başa çıkma, empati ve iletişim becerilerini geliştirme, öğrencilerin iyi oluşunu desteklemek amacıyla bir program yürütüyoruz. Okulda bağımlılığa müdahale programı ise ortaokul ve lise öğrencilerinde sigara, alkol, madde, riskli internet kullanımı, bahis ve kumar davranışlarını bağımlılığa dönüştürmeden önlemeye yönelik ikincil bir önleme programı olacak. Böylece bağımlılığın tedavisinin yüksek maliyeti ve tekrarlama riski azaltılmış olacak. Yine bir diğer program yaşam becerileri eğitim programı. Tüm okullarda rehber öğretmenler, psikolojik danışmanlar aracılığıyla uygulanmakta. Sağlıklı yaşam, sağlıklı birey ve sağlıklı toplum bakış açısıyla öğrencilerin çok yönlü gelişimini desteklemeyi hedefliyor. Yine eğitime katılım ve devamsızlığı izleme projemiz var. Zorunlu eğitim çağında olup okula kayıt yaptırmamış veya devam etmeyen çocuklara yönelik kurumlar arası işbirliğini güçlendirmeyi hedefliyor. Eğitim dışında kalan çocukların doğrudan çocuk koruma sistemine dahil edilmesi için veri paylaşımı ve yönlendirme süreçleri de bu kapsamda devam ediyor. Ülkemizde çocuklar her zaman geleceğin güvencesi olarak görülmüş ve onlara mutlu, güvenli, müreffeh bir gelecek sunulmasına özel bir önem verilmiştir. Çocuğa yönelik şiddetin sonlandırılması için ülke taahhütlerimizi yerine getirmek de bizim öncelikli hedeflerimiz arasındadır. Ancak küreselleşme ile birlikte şiddet, istismar, zorbalık, zararlı içerikler gibi karmaşık dijital risklerle siber zorbalık ve istismarın sınır tanımayan bir boyutta ilerlemesi, yeni platformlar, yapay zeka tuzakları, deepfake içerikler gibi farklı tehditlerin çocukların erişimine açık hale gelmesi, çocuğa yönelik şiddeti çok boyutlu ve karmaşık bir hale getirmektedir. Bunların yanı sıra ülkemizde geliştirilen tüm iyi uygulamaların yaygınlaştırılması konusunda bazen kaynak sınırlılıkları karşımıza bir kısıtlılık olarak çıkmaktadır. Son olarak şiddetle mücadelede yaşadığımız zorluklardan biri çocuklar, ebeveynler ve eğitimciler arasında medya ve dijital okuryazarlık farklılıkları bulunmasıdır. Bunlara karşılık olarak ülkemizin çocuğa yönelik şiddetle mücadelede en güçlü yanları çocuğa hizmet sunan paydaş kurumlar arasındaki güçlü ortaklıklardır. Çocuklara yönelik risklerin bertaraf edilmesi ve vaka yönetim süreçlerinin etkili yürütülmesi amacıyla Aile ve Sosyal Hizmetler Bakanlığı, Adalet, Milli Eğitim, Sağlık, İçişleri Bakanlıkları ve Bilgi Teknolojileri ve İletişim Kurumu ile Radyo ve Televizyon Üst Kurulu ortaklaşa hareket etmektedir. Ülkemizde çocuğa yönelik şiddetin bildirilmesi amacıyla çok çeşitli ihbar mekanizmaları kurulmuştur. Vatandaşların arayarak internet üzerinden başvuru yaptıkları ya da WhatsApp yoluyla ihbarda bulunabilecekleri bildirim mekanizmalarımız 7/24 esasıyla hizmet vermekte. Ayrıca bakanlığımıza iletilen ihbarlarda hızlı bir şekilde müdahale ederek bildirime konu olan çocuğa biz birkaç saat içinde ulaşabilmekteyiz. Güçlü yanlarımızdan biri de sivil toplum kuruluşları ve kamu kurumları arasındaki ortak kampanyalar, eğitimler, projeler ve saha çalışmaları yoluyla etkili bir işbirliği içerisinde olmamız. Medya ve okul temelli programlar aracılığıyla kamuoyunda farkındalığı artırmış olmamız ve son olarak Türkiye İstatistik Kurumu tarafından oluşturulan istatistikler yoluyla politika ve hizmet sunumunda veri odaklı eylemlerde bulunmamız bizim ülkemizin güçlü yanlarından biri. Beni dinlediğiniz için çok teşekkür ediyorum. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you so much. That was a real overview of the whole range of school-based programs that Tekia has in place to support students to reinforce positive behaviours, and also how you're working with a whole range of stakeholders to support and refer cases, including the risks that children face online. Thank you very much. We've now reached the end of our session looking at the experience of country governments, and we're going to move to our next session. For our next session, we'll be sharing promising approaches, good practices and tools available to support system-wide change to end violence in schools. So I'm going to introduce our two speakers, and then we'll hear from both of them without a break. Our first speaker will be Joanna Herat, the Senior Program Specialist and Team Leader for Safe and Inclusive Learning Environments at UNESCO, the section on health and education. And then we will hear from Chrissy Hart, the Senior Director, Data to Action at Together for Girls, who will be speaking on behalf of the Safe to Learn Coalition. So let me hand over to Joanna. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gemma. And I really want to appreciate the presentations that we have just heard from Jamaica and Nigeria and Turkey and Sri Lanka, which have really very clearly set the scene and set the tone for what I want to talk about now, which is when we zoom out from the country level and we look at the commitments that are being made around the world and these ambitious pledges that governments have been made, what does that actually look like? How do we make sure that at the level of a young person, a child in the classroom, at the level of the school system and the ecosystem of teachers and adults and families and learners, how do we ensure safety, and how do we ensure that our ambitious objectives around learning and education can be achieved and that violence is not getting in the way? So let's just reflect in the next slide, please. What did we hear in the pledges in Bogota? I mean, we've just been hearing from these 4 countries, and I think it's a wonderful snapshot set of examples of what we heard during the ministerial conference, with 45 countries pledging to uphold safe and enabling learning environments, which means that they want to uphold learners' right to a safe, nurturing environment and to turn these commitments into progress on the ground. So those 45 countries have all identified different strategies and entry points, and often looked at different types of violence that require attention in their own context, which is absolutely right. And of course, we would be hoping that any interventions that are happening are going to be based on the evidence that might be available in those countries, research that would have been done at the school level, at the classroom level, with young people, with teachers, to understand what are the most pervasive forms of violence, and also what are the more hidden forms of violence, because we need to make sure that we don't ignore those. So what we can see here is that there are countries that have, many countries chose to put a focus on developing and strengthening the curricula, that what will be taught at primary and secondary levels, to make sure that children have the tools and the knowledge and the understanding to be able to recognize violence, to be able to act when necessary, maybe to be able to know where to go to talk to a trusted adult. And of course, the flip side of that is making sure that teachers are trained and supported. And a smaller number, but still an important number of countries made pledges around teachers. And we heard a little bit just now from colleagues at the country level talking about the work they are doing. Governance and policies coming up in the pledges, also important questions around the involvement of learners, the participation of learners, and more broadly on the enabling environment. So what we're seeing here then is that countries increasingly recognizing the cross-sectoral nature of a safe learning agenda and how we need to be advancing progress on many different levels. And I will come back to that in a moment. Next slide, please. I think it's really important for us to take a step back and recall why we're all engaged in doing this work and why this is so important. Violence in and around schools can take many different forms. It can be physical, sexual, psychological or emotional violence. It can range from corporal punishment or violent discipline. It can include sexual exploitation in a school setting. It could be bullying amongst peers or sexual harassment. These are just examples. And we need to be able to address and see all of those forms of violence and make sure that the programs that are being put in place are fit for purpose for recognizing and challenging all of those practices. But the various forms of violence that I've just listed are really influenced by multiple and intersecting different drivers. And these are at various levels. There's drivers at the individual level, drivers at the social level, and then there's also gender norms, which are underpinning violence in and around schools. So at the system level, we might be talking about a negative school climate, a climate where violence is happening in the playground, for example, or teachers are exercising violence, sometimes even among themselves and on learners, and no one says anything. The climate just isn't helpful and isn't safe for learners. It could be interpersonal levels, so the way that conflicts are managed, maybe they're ignored, maybe there are no tools or practices for acknowledging that conflict might be happening and trying to understand and help resolve that. We also know that there's a lot happening at the individual level, which is often why the curriculum-based components can be so important. Many children are simply not aware of their rights. Many children also are growing up in settings, maybe in homes or in wider community settings, where they're exposed to high levels of violence, and this is very normalized. So having the opportunity to reflect on what is violence and what does that violence mean and how does that make me feel, how does it lead to changing my actions, but also how does it make us as a group of peers behave and think and feel about one another. Social and gender norms, we know, are absolutely critical in the way that all the people who are interacting in a school community feel and think about their relationships with one another and how they feel and think and act vis-a-vis violence. So in those settings where there are high levels of gender inequality, or there's patriarchal norms that dominate, for example, the way that girls and boys are meant to interact, it's equally as important to shine a light or put a mirror up to those long-held beliefs and those norms as it is to be able to identify and talk about violence. So seeing those patterns together is critical. Violence, just as it has many drivers, has many different consequences. So we know it has negative impacts on learning. So learning outcomes are lower for those students who've experienced bullying or other forms of violence. We know also that it's having a very negative impact on health outcomes, whether that be mental health outcomes, a sense of agency as well. But it's also having an impact in some cases where sexual violence is involved, for example, can be leading to pregnancies. It's also an infringement of rights. So we need to be looking at this question from a perspective of the protection of rights, but also a promotion of the benefits of education, of health, of social well-being, and the impact that violence would have on those. So if we want to address violence in and through schools, we have to address all these different drivers, and we have to be thinking about the different consequences. So in order to do that, we have to embrace this messy complexity, and we need to take a holistic approach. We need to be thinking about transforming education systems. We need to be leveraging partnerships between education and other sectors. And what's really great is that the pledges from Bogota are already pointing us in that direction with the country who've made pledges. We need to be doing more, and we need to be encouraging even more than 45 countries to be thinking explicitly about education. So what does it mean really to have this holistic or systems-wide approach? This is an operating framework, a programming framework based on the evidence that's available. And you can see and learn more about this framework in the Safe to Learn and Thrive publication, which UNESCO published last year around the time of the Ministerial Conference. And what we are urging countries to do is to look at these complex and interrelated causes and impacts and take a systems-wide approach that uses strategies that operate on multiple levels and that incorporate diverse expertise and different kinds of stakeholders. So we need to be seeing action that is at the school level. So that would be the curriculum, the teaching and learning. We need to be seeing action that's explicitly around the school environment. That could be codes of conduct, but also the policies and the regulations at the school level, and physical spaces as well that are safe, gender, sex separate toilets, for example, or well-lit spaces. At the policy level, planning for the future and explicitly integrating the issue of violence into plans as well as laws and policies is going to be absolutely critical for making sure that action then happens at the school level. And of course, we need to be seeing that strong connection to child protection laws and gender-based violence laws. We've heard a little bit about reporting and response. At the school level, what does that mean? How would a learner report the experience of violence which they have had, or where they've been a bystander and they've observed violence? Who is then going to act on those reports? And it was very heartening to hear some of the examples from the countries who just spoke. We've talked a bit about partnership. We're here in a digital dialogue where the focus is on ending violence against children broadly. Different digital dialogues have talked about the role of different sectors, and we really can't understate that. We can't really underline that enough. It's absolutely critical that the education sector is able to work hand in hand with those who are responsible more broadly for child protection at the country level, and also with health. And I started off by mentioning the question of data and how we need to be basing our programs on data and evidence, and collecting regularly and understanding what the patterns of violence are, what would be happening in primary schools, what's happening in secondary schools, how are girls experiencing differently from boys, and also critically, violence that's sometimes invisible, those people who whose voices often are not counted. So I would also specifically mention learners living with disabilities, those from ethnic minority groups who speak different languages, and learners who identify or who are perceived as being LGBTQI learners or not conforming to gender norms. The presentations that we just saw, I think, demonstrated this holistic approach. We heard Jamaica talking about policy guidance on different thematic areas, creating the links between families and schools, and we know that that's really critical. We heard examples from Nigeria, for example, about talking the curriculum and the teaching materials, and also a couple of countries referring to positive discipline and ending corporal punishment. We heard Turkey talking about reporting systems and response. And in Sri Lanka, the idea that this issue of school violence has now been integrated into a national plan so that there's a very, very clear framework for working on these issues, as well as the work to change attitudes and culture. We can see that this holistic view is beginning to take place. We encourage you to be thinking in this kind of complex systems way when putting in place national level and even at the school level programs to end violence in and through education. And if you want to know more about this approach, then please do refer to the publication, Safe to Learn and Thrive. There's also global guidance that was produced by a couple of partners, UNESCO with UN Women and partners working with us through Safe to Learn and through the SIGBB Global Working Group, that is based on evidence and promotes this sense of a holistic approach and gives some very, very practical examples about how you might want to do that at national level. And I will end there. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Joanna. Let me hand straight on to Chrissy from Together for Girls.
Thank you, Gemma, and thank you for that great presentation, Joanna. I'm thrilled to be with you all today on behalf of the Safe to Learn Initiative and Coalition. On average, children around the globe spend 7,751 hours in primary and lower secondary schools. However, those of us working across the education and child protection sectors know all too well that while schools can offer profound opportunities for children's growth, development, and learning that positively impact their outcomes in adulthood, they can also be sites of fear, intimidation, and violence. As you've heard, at the 2024 Global Ministerial Conference on Ending Violence Against Children, numerous states and development partners made commitments to prevent and respond to violence in and around schools. They prioritize these commitments to support safe schools because they understand, and the data and evidence bear out, that a safe school environment free from violence is essential for foundational learning. Fear of violence, whether physical, emotional, or sexual, hampers concentration, engagement, and academic performance. In contrast, safe school environments foster better cognitive development, allowing children to thrive. Now, like Joanna has just done, I'm going to ground us a little bit in the positive implications of really tackling this intersection of violence in school environments. We know that schools where children feel safe and protected see higher attendance and reduced dropout rates. They protect children's emotional health, allowing them to thrive, while exposure to violence can cause trauma and stress, which hinders learning outcomes. Safe schools promote positive social and behavioral norms, which can help reduce violence across generations. In doing so, they can challenge harmful social norms, such as discriminatory gender stereotypes and the acceptability of violence, positively influencing not just learners, but having spillover effects as well to families and communities. And finally, safe schools empower girls, reducing the risk of gender-based violence, of child marriage, early pregnancy, by keeping them in educational settings and providing a safe space for their growth. So, Safe to Learn was developed as an action-oriented response and commitment to tackle the demands articulated in a youth manifesto in which hundreds of young people across the globe asked us, the global community, to elevate the issue of violence in and around schools and to make prevention and response to violence a priority in education programming. Safe to Learn is a global initiative dedicated to ending violence in schools so that every child can learn in a safe, inclusive, and supportive environment. It brings together governments, international organizations, civil society, and private sector partners to ensure that schools are places where children thrive and reach their full potential, free from fear and harm. Safe to Learn is backed by a powerful coalition of 16 partners representing civil society, UN entities, donors, global partnerships, and the private sector. Safe to Learn is a catalyst for change so that all children can learn safely, no matter how or where they learn. Next slide, please. So Safe to Learn looks specifically at the role of the education sector in addressing violence in and around schools, combined with child protection, social and behavioral change, as well as efforts focused on gender and health, to challenge deeply rooted social and gender norms that support the acceptability of violence. Our approach to ending violence in and through schools consists of two key objectives. The first is ending all violence that happens while at school, on and around school grounds, getting to and from school, and in online activity linked to a child's school life. And our second objective is using schools as an entry point to reduce violence in other areas of children's lives. So in the home, community, and online, as well as other interpersonal violence outside of school settings. At the heart of Safe to Learn is the call to action, which sets out 5 key areas where we urgently need to act to end school violence. They offer a blueprint for what works and provide concrete benchmarks to measure progress and hold governments accountable, including through implementing policy and legislation, strengthening prevention and response, shifting social and gender norms and behaviors, investing resources effectively, and generating and using evidence. Next slide, please. So to support the implementation of the call to action, the Safe to Learn initiative developed a technical package. The package consists of a global programmatic framework and a benchmarking tool, as well as a diagnostic tool. The global programmatic framework and benchmarking tool provides guidance on translating the call to action into practical actions, highlights technical resources, some of which Joanna has just mentioned, to assist in the design of interventions, and suggests a framework for monitoring and tracking results. The diagnostic tool was designed to support countries in measuring the degree and quality of national efforts to prevent and respond to violence in and around schools. It provides national, decentralized, and school-level benchmarks to track progress and aid in prioritizing investments at the national, subnational, and school levels. With support from the Wellspring Philanthropic Fund, Together for Girls is working with Haki Elimu, a national education partner in Tanzania, to adapt and implement the benchmarking and diagnostic tools. In 2026, Tanzania will launch its report detailing findings from the country's second Violence Against Children and Youth Survey, or VACS. This is a comprehensive, population-based, nationally representative survey that helps us to understand children's experiences of physical, sexual, and emotional violence, and the consequences and potential drivers. So as part of Together for Girls' work to support the VACS data to action process, and in our role as a member organization of Safe to Learn, we've committed to supporting national civil society leadership to utilize the Safe to Learn technical package to support its work to deliver on one of its ministerial pledges. So Tanzania has committed to installing child protection desks in all 26,659 schools across the country by 2029. And we want to support that work and related policies and interventions to strengthen school-focused interventions. This will be the first civil society-led implementation of these tools on the African continent, and we hope that this will provide a model for African and other regional leadership and collaboration with Safe to Learn in support of ministerial commitments focused on safe schools and the imperative of ensuring that all children everywhere are safe to learn. Thank you. Back over to you, Gemma.
Thank you so much, Joanna and Chrissy. That was an incredibly broad and rich presentation from each of you that really gives the context of all the technical work, the tools and the resources that are there supporting national governments and national stakeholders to deliver on the Bogota pledges. I'm really excited that we have time for questions and answers. That's not always the case in these dialogues. So thanks to all the panelists for sticking to time and being so concise in their remarks. We'll have a few questions that we've collected from the chat. And then as this is a dialogue, we also have a question for you. So we'll be coming to that in a few minutes. So I'm going to start by directing my first question at the country representatives, so the representatives from the 4 governments that have spoken. If you would like to respond to this question, please raise your hand and I'll come to each of you. We'll have a couple of questions and then I'll move on to more if we have time. Let's see how we go. So to begin with, I think we all understand on this call, because that's why we're here, the importance of children being safe in school and free from violence, and that it's not just a child's right, it's also a prerequisite for learning. And yet ending violence in school hasn't always been core to government plans and budgets, given many competing priorities and resources. So in your experience, how have you raised the profile of addressing violence in schools within your ministry and really seen that translate into plans and resources? So I'm hoping that I can see some hands raised. I'm looking across the panel. But if any of the panelists would like to reflect on how in their experience they have really moved this agenda forward post-Bogota, to start to see these actions really being seen as core to the foundational learning agenda, a prerequisite for children's learning as well as a child's right, then please do come in. And if any of the others that are managing the call can see anything that I can't see, then please do let me know. Let me broaden the question. So as well as the importance of really building momentum, we also want to look at how we can promote cross-sectoral coordination to deliver on the Bogota pledges. And many of you reflected on how you've been working cross-sectorally, both across government and with different stakeholders at the national level. So again, reflecting on your experience of how you've promoted that cross-sectoral coordination, I think that is also something which would be of interest to those that are listening today. So I can see we have Ms. Ayşegül has raised her hand. So let me first turn to Takia. Thank you.
Tekrar merhabalar. Bizim özellikle okullarda şiddetle mücadele kapsamında yürüttüğümüz bir dizi çalışmalar var. Bunları daha önce Bogota'da da açıklamıştık. Burada da kısaca daha farklı boyutlarını dile getirdim ben. Okullarda özellikle biz ihbar mekanizmalarımızı işletiyoruz ve herhangi bir ihbar gerçekleştiğinde hızlıca orada hem okul yönetimince hem de bizim bakanlığımız sosyal hizmet müdahalelerini gerçekleştiriyor. Bu kapsamda çalışmalarını yürüttüğümüz yine bir çalışmamız var. Bu da okul sosyal hizmet projesi dediğimiz bir proje. Bu projeyi de şu anda şekillendirmeye çalışıyoruz. Sosyal hizmeti okulların içine direkt entegre etmek istiyoruz. Yine hem ebeveynler noktasında hem de eğitim verenler ve çocuklar noktasında farklı bilinçlendirme ve farkındalık çalışmalarımız var. Yine çocuk hakları il komitelerimiz, çocuk hakları alanında çalışan 40.000'den fazla çocuğumuz bulunmakta ve bu çocuklar okullarda akrandan akrana eğitim yoluyla bazı konularda işte bu çevreyle ilgili konular olabilir ya da akran zorbalığı gibi konuları olabilir. Bazı konularda akranlarına eğitim veriyorlar. Bizim bu seneki gündemimiz bu manada akrandan akrana eğitimlerde akran zorbalığı. Çocuklar kendi arkadaşlarına akran zorbalığıyla ilgili eğitimler verecekler. Modüllerimiz hazırlandı, okullarla irtibata geçildi ve okullar açıldıktan sonra şu anda Türkiye'de okullar tatil döneminde okullar açıldıktan sonra inşallah bu konuda bu şekilde bir uygulamaya da başlayacağız. Teşekkür ediyorum.
Thank you so much for reflecting on that work that's happening at the school level. Would any other panelists like to reflect either on how they've raised the profile and the importance of addressing violence in schools within their ministry plans and budgets, or indeed how they've promoted cross-sectoral collaboration towards delivering on the Bogota pledges? Let me turn to Ms. Blair of Jamaica. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Trying to turn my camera on. Right, the government has provided budgetary support for programs, initiatives within the school-wide framework of the school-wide positive behavior. When we talk about support that may be needed for students to be referred for psychosocial support, or to see a psychologist, psychiatrist outside of what the school can provide, there is budget support for that. We also have, in terms of bullying, there is an anti-bullying committee that has been established, and there are plans to declare a National Anti-Bullying Day coming up this year. So we want to raise the awareness of that just a little more, so that more persons can become more sensitive to the issue of bullying in schools. But we do have, for the pledges that we have made towards ending violence against those 3 pledges, there is concentrated effort, bearing in fact that the pledges were made after the initial budget, budget process, whereby we would be required to submit our budgets for the next financial year. Those pledges were made after that. We had the conference after. But within the existing budgets, what we have tried to do is to find at least budgetary support to identify budget that can be channeled towards what we want to accomplish in terms of the plan. So in terms of the pledges, so we do have budgetary support that is targeted for the pledges that we've made.
Thank you very much for linking your plans to the budget and explaining how that's happening in Jamaica. We're beginning to run out of time for this part of the session. I just want to confirm. Oh, we have one more hand. It's difficult for me to see. Mr. Musa, let me turn to you next. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to talk in the area of cross-sectoral collaboration in ensuring that we renege our pledge towards ending violence against children. Teachers in Nigeria are being trained on education for health and well-being, such that teachers are able to identify children that need support because of abuse, which could have happened maybe in the schools or from the homes, and then they will be counseled and then referred to health facilities. And when the issue has gone beyond the issue of health and has gone to the region of legal, it gets to be reported to the police, and then from there it will be referred to the courts for necessary action. So there is a very strong cross-sectoral collaboration in Nigeria, whereby issues of violence against children are dealt with. Just as I have earlier mentioned, we have technical working groups that are coordination mechanism that involves key stakeholders cutting across the government, the non-governmental organizations, and the development partners. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's a good experience to learn from. Thank you. So I have one last question, which has come on the chat. We heard about the Safe to Learn call to action and the Safe to Learn initiative. Some countries have not yet endorsed the Safe to Learn call to action, but they are taking, as we've heard, many steps to prevent and respond to violence in schools. So, Chrissy, could I turn to you and ask, from your experience, what would you say are the key benefits of countries joining the Safe to Learn initiative? Obviously speaking on behalf of a civil society organization and not government, but I think you've had a perspective on the initiative and the work at country level.
Absolutely. Thanks, Gemma, and thank you to whomever posed the question. It's a really good one. At Together for Girls, one of our taglines and mottos is strength in numbers. And I think that really exemplifies and describes the strength of the Safe to Learn initiative and coalition. We have, a cadre of UN entities, of civil society organizations, of development implementers with quite a lot of experience tackling the intersection of violence in school settings, which I think we've heard today, the imperative is obvious. And this is an area that has, I think, more recently become a focus for governments, for our global community. And so really leveraging the expertise and knowledge of the Safe to Learn partners and their networks in this very connected way, I think is a huge boon to government's efforts to really move the needle on safe and accessible school environments. And just by way of a quick example, I'll share that one of the neat things about our experience in working with Haki Elimu in Tanzania, and really piggybacking on the opportunity of the latest VAX survey in Tanzania, and a lot of awareness and excitement to continue tackling issues of violence in Tanzania specifically, is that we've been able to create cross-regional learning exchanges. So Haki Elimu has had the opportunity to dialogue with Aulas en Paz, a Latin American organization that has spearheaded the adaptation and implementation of the Safe to Learn technical package, the tools that I discussed a little bit earlier, in 6 countries in Latin America. So this really wonderful opportunity to dialogue, to exchange experiences, across regions, and strengthen national response. So yeah, I hope that countries who've heard a little bit about Safe to Learn today, who are not yet engaged, will really consider joining our community. I think it's a great opportunity to seek further support for your great efforts.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Chrissy. And maybe I'll just take the chair's privilege as the head of the Secretariat for Safe to Learn to encourage those on the call to have a look at the Safe to Learn Coalition website, where you can find more information about how to engage at the national level with Safe to Learn. So now it's your turn. We're going to see if we make this work. We're going to try and have a Slido, which will be asking you a question. So we would like to ask you, I'm going to give you a question, it's on the screen, to put your phones on the QR code and open up the Slido. And we'd like you to share in one short phrase, because this will be a word cloud, what action could your ministry, school, or organization take this year to ensure all children are safe to learn? So you can see that question on the screen, and you can open up the Slido using the QR code. And we should see the responses beginning to come. And we'll see the most common responses, I think, larger on the screen. let's see how the technology works. So in one short phrase, what action could your ministry, school, or organization take this year to ensure all children are safe to learn? So much needs to be done. How would you prioritize? We're trying to do that as a global community through the follow-up to the pledges made in Bogota and through all the support and all the resources that are available globally and through regional and national level partners. So let's brainstorm and have a think as a community, what action could we take that would really make a difference and impact children in their classrooms and at the school level? So we can see the word cloud building here. It's not a word cloud which has the most common words of a different size, but we can see here, let's have a look. Now it's forming. So I'm just taking a moment to have a look at what's coming up, and then I can reflect that back to you. So I think we've got here actions at all different levels of the education system. We're talking about the need for laws to be in place, policies to be in place, but also for there to be implementation of those laws and policies at a school level, at a classroom level, supporting teachers, because it's teachers that build that culture, that violence-free culture at a school level. They need support. They need not only the laws and policies to be in place, but the guidance, the training, the peer support. We've also got reflections here on the importance of the wider community, of adults, of parents, relationships, community. So I think here you're reflecting the importance of a whole school approach that goes beyond the classroom, but really engages all of those peers and influencers that work together to support children's development and make sure that schools are a safe place for them to learn, and that they have the support, the referral mechanisms in place where needed to those other government and community services. So thank you for sharing your ideas. You'll be able to have a look at that when we share the recording. I'm going to now draw this Q&A segment to a close. And I'm going to hand over to Christopher Castle, the Director of the Division for Peace and Sustainable Development of the Education Sector in UNESCO, to deliver the concluding remarks. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks very much, Gemma. And let me begin first by sincerely thanking Dr. Pia Brito for her thoughtful framing at the start of this session, as well as the co-organizers for their leadership in advancing the agenda on safe and enabling learning environments for learners everywhere. In particular, I'd like to thank the children whose voices we heard loud and clear today. Thanks to their video contributions and the words that serve so powerfully to remind us what's at stake and why this work matters and who we're ultimately accountable to. We also want to thank the speakers from Nigeria, Jamaica, Sri Lanka, and Turkey for the reflections and concrete examples and testaments to their country's leadership in ending violence in and around schools in all its forms, and ensuring that schools become and remain safe spaces for all learners. The contributions from Joanna at UNESCO and Chrissy from Safe to Learn reminded us that countries are not alone in their efforts to end violence in and around schools, and that evidence-informed frameworks and tools exist to guide and support implementation. Knowledge and know-how are available to inform effective programs and policies, and we indeed heard about many of those and shared them again today. It's encouraging to see that the commitments made in Bogota are not sitting idle, and they're being translated into real progress, from Sri Lanka's legislative efforts to ban corporal punishment and train teachers in positive discipline, to Nigeria's investment in safe schools and teacher training, as well as Jamaica's efforts to scale up school-based violence prevention programs, and Turkey's progress in enhancing school counseling services and digital reporting mechanisms. Countries are already moving from commitment to practice, and it's very reassuring and inspiring to hear that today. These examples remind us that, while contexts may differ, the core ingredients of safe and enabling learning environments are remarkably consistent, and they include legislation that protects children, schools that foster inclusion and promote well-being, curricula that equip learners with the right knowledge and skills, trained and supported teachers, and coordinated services to support learners when needs arise. I'd like to add my voice to today's digital dialogue, and I want to reaffirm that safe and enabling learning environments are not peripheral. They are foundational to the right to education and indeed a good quality education. And I think Gemma also really underscored that point in her comment. This is clearly recognized in the 2023 recommendation on education for peace, human rights, and sustainable development, which was adopted by UNESCO member states in 2023, and which calls on education systems to promote not only academic success, but the full and harmonious development of all learners in dignity, empathy, and mutual respect. Creating physically, emotionally, and psychologically safe learning environments is not an add-on or an afterthought. And that's really been confirmed in today's webinar. It's also a core responsibility of education systems. And this is because a child who feels unsafe cannot learn, a school that tolerates violence cannot nurture growth, and a system that neglects well-being cannot deliver on quality or excellence. So if we're serious about transforming education, then every school must become a space where children are not only taught, but truly supported to learn and to thrive. At UNESCO, we're proud to work alongside WHO, UNICEF, the Safe to Learn Secretariat, and all of you to advance system-wide approaches that make safety, inclusion, and well-being integral to education planning and reform. Today's dialogue has really helped, I think, all of us take stock. Now it's time to act, to strengthen what we're already starting to do, and consolidate and scale up what we're doing more intentionally, more ambitiously, and more collaboratively. Let us move forward together to ensure that safe and enabling learning environments become the global norm and not the exception. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chris. This dialogue is now formally closed. However, as you know, this dialogue is one of a series, and so we'll now turn to WHO to update on the next steps towards the one-year anniversary of the Bogota conference, inclusive of pledges made to create safe and enabling schools. Over to you, Helen.
Thank you so much, Gemma. And thank you, colleagues. Many weeks and months ago, when we dreamt of what this digital dialogue series could deliver, we could only have hoped for such significant participation. And I should let you know that whilst it's not competitive, this digital dialogue has secured the most significant attendance. At a high point, there were 296 individuals from around the world who joined this session, which is really fantastic, and I think testament to the strength and the commitment of the Safe and Enabling Schools community. And I won't reflect on the specific comments that were made and the remarks that were made by all countries, which were incredibly interesting. And I think I do want to kind of pay tribute to the fact that they were very honest in terms of the successes, but also the challenges they've been facing. But perhaps just to draw a little reflection on a few, I certainly am going to try and channel and carry forward the energy and the vivacity of Anna Sophia, the young advocate that spoke at the start of the session. Her commitment to ensuring that all children are safe to learn is something that we can all look to channel, I think, in our daily lives, both personally and professionally. And then perhaps just to draw and reflect back on both Pia's comments in opening and then Joanna's comments. Pia really reminded us that this is not something that's nice to have. Safe and enabling school environments are essential. They're a must-have, not a nice to have. And there's really an opportunity to ensure that we carry through on that wish and translate it into action. Let me tell you about some of the things that are coming down the track where we really invite you to continue to engage and really where your contribution will be critical to ensuring the success of these moments. We have an opportunity on the horizon to celebrate progress. At the anniversary, the first anniversary of the Ministerial Conference in that first week of November, we are planning for a global high production celebratory event. We're inviting all government pledge makers to submit by the 30th of September a summary of what they pledged, what they've delivered, and what they plan to do moving forwards. And we'll be using those summaries to help inform both a report and a global celebratory moment that really reflects on the progress that has been made in that first year, looking beyond Bogota. But we also hope to look to the year after the anniversary, and we're very hopeful and in fact quietly confident that there will be a second ministerial conference, and we're working very hard at the moment to try and lock in the member states that will be hosting that member state conference, that ministerial conference. And I think that's where Joanna's call to action really comes to the fore. She asked us to embrace the messy complexity of working in this space and working in the political and fiscal climate that we're working in. And I think there really is a huge opportunity to ensure that this breakthrough for ending violence against children remains front and centre. And so to Chrissy's point about there being strength in numbers, I really want to reiterate that and really to encourage you that there's an opportunity in these coming months through to the anniversary, but far beyond that, to ensure that education and safe and enabling school settings stays at the very kind of epicenter of all the work that's being done globally on ending violence against children. It would be remiss of me, whilst we're talking about dates for the diary, not to mention the 3 subsequent and final digital dialogues that are being hosted, all of which are incredibly pertinent to the education agenda. The next session is on corporal punishment, and in fact it is the launch of the WHO's first ever report on corporal punishment as a public health concern. It's the first time that the World Health Organization is making a case for this issue in its 78 years of existence, so please do join us next Wednesday for that session. We then subsequently have a digital dialogue on parenting and a digital dialogue on response and support services. And they happen every Wednesday at the same time. You'll hopefully receive an invitation to those. And if you missed any digital dialogues, please do check on the official Global Ministerial Conference website, where you can find recordings of all the sessions, including the session today. So on behalf of WHO, thank you so much to the organisers, to the contributors and to the attendees. We're absolutely delighted to have participated and supported this session. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.